Okay, Stalkers, I am back after my double feature of the Dennis Hopper Blues, as I like to put it, 1980s Out of the Blue, 1986 Blue Velvet. I never in a million years would have thought to say, going into this double feature tonight, that the 1980 feature would be wilder and crazier and even more bizarre than the David Lynch film, but Uncle Den Den is capable of many surprises. So, 1980s Out of the Blue. Well, apparently it was in production. Dennis Hopper was in sort of a wilderness period at that point. He was still acting. He'd made Vin Vendor's American Friend one of his best roles, and he also appeared in Apocalypse Now, memorably. But he was still finding difficulty. He's still finding it difficult to find work, and he had a reputation as a maniac, or a well-earned reputation as a maniac up to that point. So he made this film up in Canada, and apparently the screenwriter was making his debut as a director, so he was a writer-director, and one thing led to another, and maybe the screenwriter found it too difficult to take on both shores, and maybe Hopper got a little anxious. I don't really know the whole story, but Hopper took over 2 weeks into the production of the film, and apparently he did some massive rewrites to the film, and from all accounts he made it more biographical, and now having seen the film, the main character of the movie is Linda Manz. I'm not sure how old she was when she made the film. I believe she was probably a little older than her character's supposed to be in the movie. I think she's supposed to be about 15 years old in the film. I want to think she was a little older than that, playing young. But it's sort of about her, and then it becomes about her alcoholic dad, played by Dennis Hopper. But there's a weird kind of almost a seamless narrative in a way, if there is a cohesive narrative to this movie, between the two characters. There were times when I thought that the narrative that was following Linda Manz was almost in a weird way Hopper's talking about his own youth, out in the rural Midwest. And this, I believe the film's set in Canada, like a rural area of Canada, like Alberta, something like that. But there are similarities. They abound. And then when it's supposed to focus on Hopper's character when he gets out of prison, because the crux of the film is that he's an alcoholic truck driver who crashes into a school bus, like Hopper probably almost did on many occasions himself. And he's released from prison. He gets to reunite with his family. So the narrative bounces back a little bit between the two of them, and a little bit in time too. It was interesting to see sort of the connective tissue between his more experimental, drug-addled narrative from Easy Rider, which I am admittedly not a fan of. I recognize the film's importance in the timeline, but I was never a huge Easy Rider fan. But I am a huge fan of his 1987 or 88 movie Colors, which was really kind of sort of touted as his comeback to directing, his real comeback to directing after making 1971's The Last Movie, which was his follow-up to Easy Rider, which completely tanked, barely got a release, and then he went back into his wilderness years again. He was blacklisted twice in Hollywood. Nobody comes back from that. He did. It's crazy. I recommend seeing it if you are a completist, if you're into avant-garde cinema. And if you're a Hopper completist. And like I said, it is kind of interesting to see it's somewhere coming away from those more experimental narrative techniques of what he employed for Easy Rider in '69, and the more traditional narrative techniques of, say, of Colors in the '80s. And and he gives a really good performance. I wouldn't put it up there with the best of his stuff. And there's times in the movie where you can tell he's not really acting when he's playing out some of these psychotic drunk episodes, but right, sort of a little bit after that is when he kind of got back on his feet, and he took the oath, and he was sober for the last 20 or so years of his life, I think, right? And his big comeback year was 1986, so hence the double feature tonight, David Lynch's Blue Velvet, which I think not more really needs to be said about this, except that I, alone, I think, back in 1985, I was a huge David Lynch fan. I mean, when I was really that age when you stop being a passive viewer and you start becoming like a film fanatic, or a cinephile, as they like to put it, around 11, 12, 13, like those are really formative years for me. And David Lynch was a huge influence on my film education, every bit as much as his contemporaries, Spielberg, Lucas, Carpenter was a huge one with me back then, and going back to the oldies like Ford, Hawks, and Fritz Lang. So, Lynch was huge. I mean, just the language that he employed, the so surreal, the way he kind of mixed, more traditional commercial narrative with surreal technique. So, everybody counted him out after Dune. I was madly infatuated with the Elephant Man, and then I backtracked and caught Eraserhead again. I was a kid, we didn't get to go to the midnight movies, we had to find them. Mad with anticipation for Dune. Dune tanked. I was a huge fan of the film back then, even if it was just, viewing a train wreck. But it was a huge cult movie to me. I mean, I've seen Dune easily over 100 times. I love the movie. So I was the only one giving him the benefit of the doubt, I think, after Dune. He completely wrote him off. And when they announced Blue Velvet, I said, I can't wait for this, I can't wait for this. And I think people forget. I think now people in general view Tarantino as what shook up Hollywood after, there was the new Hollywood of the 70s and the corporate, like, PepsiCo 80s, where everything became sanitized and cookie cutter, what I mean. And taking no credit away from Tarantino. Tarantino was a seismic rift, in what Hollywood was turning out and what audiences wanted again. But before Tarantino, well before Tarantino, there was a great avant-garde scene that was booming in the 80s, and there were a lot of female directors like Seidelman and Bigelow coming up. But there was also Jim Jarmusch and Spike Lee, and the Coen brothers were coming out of their attic in the Midwest. But sort of forgotten. It's still a revered film, and he's a revered filmmaker, but I think what's forgotten sometimes, or maybe it's just not felt as greatly, is that Blue Velvet, when it came out in 1986, from that period of 1980 and 81 to the mid-80s, it was, there's a lot of great cinema that came out of it, but it was becoming corporate and cookie cutter, and it was stayed, and like what we were used to in the 70s of, like, one new bold experiment after the next, people taking chances on big budget levels and small. That went away for a while, and the Scorseses and the Coppolas couldn't get financing for a while. Like, it just became a different scene. So when Blue Velvet came along in 1986, it was an earthquake. It shook the industry. It shook the medium. And watching it again tonight, this is the first time I've seen it on the big screen since it came out in 1986. So that's 30 years ago, I think, right? I don't mean to carbon date myself, but I've seen it multiple times in the meantime. This is the first time I've seen it again. They had a beautiful print at Anthology Film Archives, by the way. And this particular series, Dark Hopper, which does explore that period between Easy Rider and the last movie, and his comeback in the 80s with Hoosiers and Blue Velvet. It's going on now for another week, so you'll get multiple chances to go see Blue Velvet. They're also showing Mad Dog Morgan. They're showing a movie called White Star that I never heard of before, where he plays a sort of a Colonel Tom Parker figure. Apparently one of his best, unseen performances, so that's going to be playing there too. But both of the prints of the movies were spectacular tonight. In Anthology Film Archives, I like to kid them as, our favorite haunted house on the rep circuit, but they are essential. They do great series like this all the time, and yes, I just did say do. But if you can, make it out, make it over there, and the tickets aren't that expensive, and the films are great, and the experience can be slightly surreal sometimes. If the guy who brings his own mattress shows up, that's kind of interesting. And sometimes he'll let you share it. Anyway, but I need to say nothing more, I think, about Blue Velvet. But it was an interesting contrast to see Hopper in, the depths of his wilderness years, and then to see the beginning of his comeback. And I will say this, as much as I might be used to Blue Velvet at this point, his Frank Booth in that movie remains one of the great and still unnerving villains in film history. I'm so glad we got that out of him. I'm so glad he made that comeback. I'm so glad we got, the 20 years of Dennis Hopper. And I'm so glad David Lynch came back and got to sort of change the industry. You almost can't overstate the importance of David Lynch, and that's, I think, Eraserhead's important, The Elephant Man's important. Blue Velvet is really, that's the moment where he grabbed the industry by the neck and just never looked back. So, yeah, great to see this again. Great to see Out of the Blue again. Very, very kooky movie. I could talk about this for hours. There's a lot that was going on in that film that I did not expect. Well worth checking out. Hard to find, but well worth checking out. Even if it is just an examination of the midpoint in Dennis Hopper's career. It's really interesting. So anyway, that was my excursion tonight, and yeah, I'll be back for the rest of the month of December. There's a lot going on this month, and it's not just screenings every day of It's a Wonderful Life in every venue ever. It's more than that. There's a lot more. Go to my website at nighttradestock.net. Go to the interactive calendar on that site. It'll tell you all the series and the screenings, what venues they're at. You can click through to buy tickets if you want, or you can drop me an email. You can follow me on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me right here on NightTradeStock.tv on YouTube. And don't be shy. You can share this information with friends of yours. You can let them know that there's this new YouTube channel, station. You can call it, a mishmash word if you want. Where I'll be doing this from now on. I'll be checking out movies. I'll be talking about them before I see them. Some of them I will never have seen before, so I'll have little things to say about them afterwards. And some of them I will have seen before, and I'll have even more things to say about them, because I'll have it longer to think about it. But anyway, so yeah, I'm signing off for now. This is Joe Walsh from Night Trade Stock, and as always, I am saying, stick with me, stockers.